our speaker for this evening is Dr. Federico Cugurullo from Trinity College Dublin. Federico is an associate professor in Smart and Sustainable Urbanism. And his research explores how artificial intelligence is influencing urban governance and planning, thereby impacting on the sustainability of cities. He's conducted extensive research in the Middle East and Southeast Asia and on many experimental cities, including Masdar City, Hong Kong, and the Line, or expansions of those cities. More conceptually, Federico is concerned with unpacking the notion of AI from an urbanistic perspective and in fleshing out the conceptual implications of AI-mediated urban spaces, such as the end of the city hypothesis, introduced in his monograph from 4 years ago with the great title, Frankenstein Urbanism. And I think if you haven't read that, you need to go and get it because it's got a great title. I mean, I'm intrigued. He's also co-editor of Artificial Intelligence and the City, Urbanistic Perspectives on AI. He's very kindly given me a copy this evening. So we should give him guests. The guests shouldn't be giving us gifts. But anyway, I can pass that around later if you'd like to have a browse and have a look at that. So the subject of his lecture tonight is post-human city making in the age of AI. There will be a chance to ask questions at the end of the lecture and also a chance to ask Federico any questions you have more informally during the short reception that we'll have at the end. So Federico, welcome to UCL. The floor is yours, so to speak.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nick, and thank you all for attending this lecture. It's a real pleasure for me to be here with you today. I'm sure that you've noticed that AI is entering our cities. It is becoming a part of our life. And the presence of AI is triggering profound changes. There is a clear presence of AI in our cities. And we can observe the presence of urban AIs, so artificial intelligences designed to operate in urban spaces in many different forms. We can think about vehicles operated by AI. This picture was taken recently in Hong Kong, in Kowloon, a very busy districts. And you can see that the way this type of urban AI is operating spatially speaking is in close proximity with humans. So one initial point to bear in mind is that when it comes to urban AI, we share the same spaces, we citizens, the same spaces in which AI operates. And this is not a coincidence, because another point to remember is that these are technologies designed specifically to mediate social activities, to interact with us. So in this case, AI in the shape of an AV is mediating a quintessential human activity, that of mobility. Other example, AI in the shape of robotics. Service robots managing shops, restaurants, as well as hospitals and schools. This picture was taken in Italy, in a small town, so not an experimental city, not particularly cutting edge in terms of infrastructure. What I love about this picture is that there is a robot serving food, but no one is paying attention to the robots. If you look closely at the gaze of those humans that are sharing this space, no one is paying attention to the robot. The robot has become very quickly commonplace. Another example, home surveillance drones. This is a recent technology developed by a Swiss company called Sunflower Labs. And the idea is that this technology is going to activate itself autonomously the moment intruders trespass on private property. And so the idea is that when it comes to artificial intelligence and the city, we humans and AIs are sharing the same urban environments. And in this case, we're talking about the most intimate spaces that we can think of, domestic spaces, the spaces where we live, the spaces that we experience as part of our daily life. So there are some visible changes when it comes to the influence of AI in the city, due to the visibility of the technology, the presence of the technology, due to the urban changes that are necessary to accommodate the deployment of AI in the city. So changes in terms of urban design and infrastructure. But there are also invisible changes triggered by the deployment of AI. Invisible, but nonetheless extremely impactful and profound. And this is what we're going to be focusing on today mostly. So for example, think about a technology such as that provided by Palantir in relation to urban policing. So Palantir Technologies, what they do is attempting to predict crime in the city. So where crime is likely to occur, who is going to be involved in criminal activities, and how criminal activities will unfold in urban spaces. So these are not just predictions. These are predictions that have an impact, because eventually police officers are going to target particular individuals. So there will be profound repercussions in the life of certain citizens. Or think about autonomous decision-making in relation to who's going to get a mortgage, who's going to get access to an health insurance. And again, so these are decisions mediated by AI that can have a profound impact on our life. But also speaking in terms of invisible changes triggered by the deployment of AI in our cities, we need to recognize that there is a growing neo-animism. Animism is a very, very old belief. It is a pre-modern belief. So the idea that objects have an animus, a soul. And now similar beliefs are being cultivated again in relation to AI, with many people believing that artificial intelligences such as robots or even chatbots such as ChatGPT, they have a soul, they have an animus, they have human-like properties such as consciousness and volition. And these are not simply ideas, these are beliefs that are shaping the way many people are living, the way people are living their own personal life. And so if you look at recent literature in the fields of sociology and psychology, for example, you see that there is a growing number of romantic relationships between humans and AIs. And so what we're going to explore today in relation to AI in the city are not simply physical changes, material changes in terms of urban design and infrastructure, but also changes that are affecting the very fabric of urban societies. And the argument that I'm going to advance with you today is very straightforward. The idea that we are experiencing a post-human turn in urban governance and developments, that the way cities are developing in relation to the governance of urban spaces and systems, but also the way urban societies are developing is acquiring posthuman dynamics. And we're going to explore this posthuman turn in urban governance and developments in both theory and practice, looking at case studies and ideas, philosophies of the so-called posthuman condition. So let's clarify what we mean by posthumanism, particularly in relation to cities and AI, because it's a very broad philosophy, and it is important to be precise, so to clarify what exactly we are looking at today, what kind of ideas and what kind of social repercussions. First of all, it is important to remember that posthumanism is not about going beyond humanity. So in a posthuman condition, humanity is present. Humans are present. Humans are in the loop, but they are surrounded by multiple non-human intelligences. And in particular, today we're focusing on synthetic, artificial intelligences. So humans stay. The posthuman condition is not necessarily a dystopian perspective on development. So it's not about replacement of humans or the annihilation of us as a species. It is about going beyond humanism. Humanism as a philosophy of development rooted in Renaissance philosophy. The idea that the human is the measure of all things. So posthumanism goes beyond this understanding of development, and it questions the centrality of the human being as the measure of all things, including development, urban development, and design. So here the idea is that we should be taking into account artificial intelligence also to make sense of developments, and we'll be focusing on cities developments. And also, a posthuman perspective is about going beyond the centrality of the human being, so going beyond anthropocentrism. This is a point that philosopher Rosi Beredotti made quite clear in her recent work. The centrality of humans in hierarchies of developments. So here the idea is that we don't have a hierarchy anymore with humans on top controlling other intelligences below who are in a more subordinated position. So the idea is that these hierarchies dominated by human intelligences are disappearing, that AIs are playing more and bigger roles in development, as we will see soon in practice. And this is also about questioning our understanding of technology, which traditionally, from a humanist point of view, technology has been for a long time understood as an instrument in our hands, an instrument that we can use to shape the environment around us, the physical environment, the built environment, the natural environment, but also the social environment, so society. And this is a very, very old understanding of technology. You probably remember the work of Francis Bacon, The New Atlantis. But before The New Atlantis, Bacon wrote a text called the Novum Organum, the new instruments of science, in which he talks about technology, science, machines from an instrumental point of view. So there is an instrumental understanding of technology coming from humanism, again, as a tool that we control. But this understanding, in my opinion, and this is part of the arguments that we'll develop today with you, is that this understanding is becoming obsolete, particularly in cities in which we have a number of AIs roaming free as autonomous agents, making decisions in an unsupervised manner. But also questioning the position of technology in our society. Now, we know this pretty well in the social sciences, that technology has a social dimension, that technology can shape society. But traditionally, technology has been seen as a distinct element that is not really a part of our society. It is not a member of society. And again, this is a point that, as we will see today, is being reconsidered from a posthuman perspective by scholars like myself, looking at what AI is doing in the contemporary city. Okay, so let's look at a couple of case studies to see in practice how these ideas of posthumanism can be applied in relation to very recent urban technological transformations. Our first case study is the Hadean city brain. This is part of research projects that I developed together with one of my collaborators, Dr. Xu. So we're looking at a district in Beijing, northwest Beijing, where we have a large-scale AI that is already managing large segments of urban governance, transportation, environmental monitoring, planning, health, safety. And in this case, Chinese developers have named this technology a city brain, because the idea is that this large-scale AI is going to control different parts of the city, the way our brain is controlling our limbs. So let's see how this technology works in practice. First of all, the city brain acquires a lot of information about what is happening in the city. And it does so through thousands of different sensors, CCTV cameras, microphones, motion sensors. So you can imagine this technology as having multiple eyes and ears, whereby it can develop a situational awareness, so an understanding of what is happening in the city. And sensors are distributed, integrated everywhere in the Hadean district, to the point that there is a growing panopticon, whereby the city brain can observe many different activities taking place in real time in this part of Beijing. When we started doing research on these particular projects back in 2022, there were about 10,000 sensors. And then in just 1 year, the number of sensors doubled. So you can see how quickly the sensorial apparatus of these AI is growing. And this sensorial apparatus is producing real-time information. So what is happening in the Hadean district right now in the present as I'm speaking. This is data that are being used to feed AI, so that the AI in question, the city brain, can understand more about the metabolism of the city where it is operating. But this is only the first step, because what the city brain does is turning information about the presence of the city into knowledge about its potential future. So in essence, it is using predictive algorithms to develop predictions in relation to different aspects of the city in question. Its transformations in relation to biodiversity, to the built environments, to the mobility of its inhabitants. And these are predictions that are having a profound impact on the life of people living in the ADN districts, on the physical developments of these urban area. So some examples to clarify these dynamics. The city brain is in control of traffic lights, so it would regulate urban mobility. It is also determining where criminal activities are likely to occur. And it is also determining how many police officers will be dispatched and where in the city. It is also identifying what urban areas should be expanded in relation to population projections. So there are urban changes that are triggered by the predictions that this large-scale AI is developing. Now, many of these predictions are influenced by LLMs, by large language models. I'm going to pause for a second to reflect on what this means in practice. So this city brain is using techniques to predict the future of the city. Now, some of these techniques, some of these programs have been coded not by human computer scientists, but by an LLM, akin to the way ChatGPT operates. So AI is also coding. It is shaping the very systems and techniques that it is using, in this case, to develop an understanding of the future of the city. Now, this is leading to a few issues, and there are a few questions that I think we need to ask. We interviewed a few policymakers and planners in the Haitian districts who have been using the city brain's predictions to manage urban development and governance in the city. And they explained to us that they don't quite understand the way the city brain operates and the way it is developing predictions. And that's fair enough, because it is a very complex black box, and there are LLMs at play. And so we can understand the inputs, and we can understand the outputs. So in this case, we know that the city brain is absorbing real-time information about what is happening in the city, and that it is turning this information about the present into information about potential futures. We can see the outcome in the shape of predictions. But what is happening in the middle, within the black box, how past information is turning to knowledge of the future, that process, that technique, because it is mediated by LLMs, we cannot grasp these dynamics. And so we have a situation in which policymakers and planners are taking these predictions at face value, and they're using them to shape the development of these districts. And also they're letting these large-scale AI operate in an unsupervised manner, despite the fact that they don't quite understand how it works. This is in many ways concerning when it comes to urban governance and questions of power. I mean, a question that I think is important to reflect upon is, well, in this context, who is in charge? Who is governing the city? Who has the power to shape the city and the life of those who are living, in this case, in the Haitian districts? Well, first of all, there is a complex post-human network behind the governance of the Haitian districts. We not simply have human policymakers and planners, we have multiple AIs that are shaping urban governance. We have a large-scale AI, a city brain, we have predictive algorithms, we have LLMs, and all these different AIs are having an impact on urban governance. So power is distributed among human and artificial intelligences. So if you remember what we were talking about earlier in relation to theories of posthumanism, so the idea that we don't have a hierarchy, we don't have a hierarchy anymore with human developers on top, that's it. We have a more complex network where power is unevenly distributed. But also returning to some humanist assumptions and challenging them. You probably remember the famous way of saying that knowledge is power. So we return to Francis Bacon, who popularized that motto together with Thomas Hobbes. Scientia potentia est. Knowledge is power, scientific knowledge is power. If we understand the way a system works, then we can have a strong control over it. But in this case, given that we have a situation in which human policymakers and planners don't understand how the technology is working, they don't have enough knowledge to understand its dynamics, who is really in control? Which actor has power in this context? So let's bear these questions in mind, and we're going to use them later to shape a few theoretical and practical reflections. But for now, we're going to move to our second case study. We're going to move to the Middle East. And we're going to see what is happening in Saudi Arabia in relation to a project called NEOM. And I've done quite a lot of research, empirical research, fieldwork in Saudi Arabia over the past 4 years. But I'm sure you've heard about this project before. You probably heard about Saudi Arabia a couple of days ago. It was on the news. You probably heard or read about Mohammed bin Salman visit in Washington. So Mohammed bin Salman, the crown prince of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the de facto leader of Saudi Arabia, hosted by Trump. And you probably also read that journalists asked some controversial questions about the killing of journalist Jamal Khashoggi, and that Trump denied the involvement of bin Salman in the assassination of Khashoggi, despite the fact that there is quite a lot of evidence pointing to the fact that bin Salman was planning and coordinating the assassination of Khashoggi as, at that time, 2018, a very prominent Saudi dissident. Now, I'm mentioning these facts for a couple of reasons. Number one, Khashoggi was killed shortly after publicly criticizing the NEOM project. Secondly, I wanted to mention Mohammed bin Salman because it is important to remember that despite the growing influence of artificial intelligences in governance and development, as I specified earlier, a post-human condition is not one in which humanity is disappearing, in which humans are not part of networks of governance. You know, humans especially powerful individuals, are very much a part of the way AI is developing, the way AI is being deployed. And in the case of NEOM, Mohammed bin Salman is the leader of the project. He's an individual with a lot of power, and it is using it to create new AIs as a way to develop its political economy as part of a broader transition to a post-oil economy. Now, back to NEOM and questions of AI urbanism. So cities mediated by different AIs. So AI that is providing services, AIs that are controlling urban systems and services. So in this case, they're building new cities, including the Line, but there are more cities such as Trojena and artificial islands. So plenty of new urban spaces that are being built with the idea of at some points being controlled by artificial intelligences. So we have autonomous vehicles, but also flying autonomous vehicles, which I know this is going to sound preposterous, but they are developing this technology. And I saw it firsthand as part of my fieldwork in Saudi Arabia. So different scales of urban AI developments, including an urban operating system called NEOS, very similar to the IDEON city brain that we just explored. So the logic is the same. We have a large-scale AI that is absorbing information about what is happening in the present, and then is using this information to try and predict what is going to happen next. But also what is happening here is that NEOS is supposed to control other AIs, all the robots and autonomous vehicles that will be operating in cities like the Line. As I mentioned earlier, AI is also having profound social repercussions, not simply material or infrastructural repercussions. So NEOM's AI is a force that is shaping the very fabric of the Saudi society. Normally, when we talk about society, we'll be talking about citizens, people like you and I. But in the case of NEOM, the situation is a little bit different because they plan to have a different kind of citizenship, a posthuman one, returning to our original theoretical arguments. So when I was doing fieldwork in Saudi Arabia, I was often asking one question: who is going to live here? Who's going to live in NEOM, in new cities like the Line? And I was given this answer, that the Line is going to be the first city in the world where robots will be citizens. So that's the vision. And to some extent, this vision has already been implemented when in 2017, a robot named Sophia, developed by an international company called Hanson Robotics, was officially made a Saudi citizen. Now, let's pause for a couple of minutes and reflect on the implication of these unprecedented events. I argue that the fact that Sophia became a Saudi citizen doesn't reflect the actual mental capabilities of these technology. It doesn't mean that Sophia is conscious the way you and I are. We need to remember that AI is not simply a technology, it is also an ideology. So I tend to refer to it using the word AI ideology. So AI ideology in the sense that this is a way to mask broader political economies, to mask, to hide the broader agendas in terms of urban development and political power, the power of Mohammed bin Salman in particular. So Sophia was essentially made a Saudi citizen to revamp the international reputation of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, because the plan of bin Salman is to promote Saudi Arabia as a progressive country, as a future-oriented country that is so open-minded that they can make robots citizens. And this is part of a broader economic transition. They want to develop tourism as one of the new strands of the national economy. And they're doing so, again, by rebranding the whole country as a futuristic place. The NEOM is playing a big role in this plan, which in turn is part of Mohammed bin Salman political agenda to save the economy of Saudi Arabia, to preserve his autocracy as the de facto sole ruler of the kingdom. So there are broader political economies at play, but also there are beliefs, there are ideas. The ideology of AI is changing the way we understand the technology to the point that there are a growing number of people who are believing that robots like Sophia are indeed conscious and should deserve rights as much as we do. So we are reaching the final part of the talk, and I want to talk about what I believe are the main risks of post-human cities in the age of AI. The first one, culture shock, cultural repercussions. In many ways, first of all, confusion in relation to the way we understand society, in the way we understand and approach social relations, but also shock as profound traumatic repercussions that can harm and endanger urban societies. So, for example, if we think about the case of Sophia, making robots officially a citizen, so officially part of human society, can have a profound repercussions, because this is down to changing legislations. This is about giving rights to artificial intelligences. And we need to remember that the exercise of AI's rights can conflict with the way we exercise our own rights as humans. But also, giving rights to an AI also means giving responsibility to that artificial intelligence. So granting legal personhood to an artificial intelligence means that that AI will become responsible for any kind of wrongdoing. And so this automatically translates into responsibility shifting away from AI companies. And I believe that this is a dangerous situation that we need to avoid. But also, as I was explaining in the beginning, there is a growing number of individuals these days, especially kids, that do believe that artificial intelligences such as ChatGPT are conscious, that they have feelings, and that they are starting romantic relationships with that. So we need to be careful about these social repercussions. Another important risk to bear in mind is lack of accountability. if you think about what is happening in contexts in which city brains are being developed and implemented, we have large-scale AIs that operate in a way that is very opaque. And so these systems are lacking transparency. And if there is no transparency, then we don't have accountability. And this is quite problematic because in governance, power should not be a one-way flow. So those on the receiving hand should be able to question those in power, should be capable of holding someone who is in power accountable for their actions and decisions. But in an age in which LLMs are shaping urban governance, this dynamic is missing. And this is not only happening in faraway experimental cities. I mentioned earlier Palantir technologies, and they are widely deployed in Western cities. So this is a very concrete risk that we are already facing here in Europe. Last but not least, the emergence of large-scale trolley problems. And to explain this issue, I'm just going to, first of all, illustrate what a trolley problem is, although you're probably familiar with the basic idea behind it. And so the trolley problem was originally formulated by an English philosopher, Philippa Foot, back in 1967, and later reformulated in many different versions, including the one that you're looking at right now, which is called the bystander at the switch. And the idea is very simple. So imagine that you are this individual standing by a switch, which you can throw. You can throw the switch, you can pull the lever. And in this case, a runaway trolley is going to switch track. As you can see, the way the problem, the scenario is being formulated is such that harm is unavoidable. Whatever you do, even if you decide just to do nothing, someone is going to suffer. So it's a situation in which distributing harm is unavoidable. And the trolley problem was recently used in the field of AV research, research on autonomous vehicles, to think about what would happen if we didn't have a runaway trolley, but we had, hypothetically speaking, an autonomous vehicle that is malfunctioning. And there is a lot of literature on these scenarios. But today, I want to twist the trolley problem and talk about the trolley problem not as an issue related to transportation, but in relation to planning. And what I'm arguing is that urban planning is a large-scale trolley problem. Because in planning, in a situation in which resources are finite, spaces are finite, and this is always the case, whatever you do, whatever you're planning for, there will be harm. You will be always in a situation in which distributing harm will be unavoidable, like in a trolley problem. So for example, imagine that you need to plan the development of your city. Do you plan for the development of office spaces? Or do you plan for the development of housing? And if so, do you plan for the development of premium accommodations or social housing? Or you don't plan for the development of urban spaces, and you plan for the development of green spaces, and you want to preserve regional ecosystems. Now, whatever your choice, whatever you decide to do, harm will be unavoidable. Maybe you're going to harm the financial interests of some companies, or maybe you're going to harm the needs of a family looking for a new house. Or maybe you're going to harm the biodiversity of the region where you're living. So planning is a very, very complex trolley problem because distributing harm is almost all the time unavoidable. So it's not simply a technical process. It's an ethical choice the moment you plan for the development of space. And the problem is that nowadays, with large-scale AIs, LLMs, these very complex planning choices, which are ethical choices, are in the hands not of human policymakers and planners, but also in the hands, so to speak, of artificial intelligences. So to conclude, I want to share with you some potential solutions and way forward to improve the current state of affairs. First of all, I think that in academia we have a lot of work to do to re-theorize urban governance, to theorize new techniques of governance, because what we have at our disposal right now is not adequate anymore. Our theories and techniques of governance are based on principles, on concepts that are obsolete, that are not appropriate for the post-human condition that we have explored today in this lecture. So, for example, one important, a core principle of governance is that of cooperation. The idea that there are multiple stakeholders, we find common grounds so that different stakeholders with different interests, they find common grounds and they find a way to cooperate to reach a common goal. Now, in a post-human condition in which the stakeholders, the agents in questions are human and artificial intelligences, we cannot take cooperation for granted. If you look closely at recent literature in computer science, there is no evidence that humans and AIs can efficiently cooperate. And also, to what extent is cooperation possible the moment some of the agents in question, human agents, policymakers, planners, don't understand how other agents, such as large language models, operate. So there is an epistemological vacuum. So there is a lack of knowledge that is compromising the foundations of governance, as we've been thinking about governance for a long time. In more practical terms, I think that we should be implementing evidence-based policies when it comes to the deployment of artificial intelligence. I've been looking very closely at the scientific literature on cities and AI, and there is also very little evidence of the extent to which the use of AI in the city can improve urban sustainability. There is basically no evidence that AI can make cities greener, happier, that AI can decrease carbon emissions. Actually, the evidence is pointing to the opposite scenario, one of stark unsustainability. So we need to be careful. We need to use science to inform policy, to look very carefully at what AI can do for the city, and try to avoid the use of AI when we're not sure that its deployment can actually be beneficial to society and the environment. But in addition to that, I also believe that we need ethics-based policies, that we need to assess the deployment of AI in cities from an ethical point of view. Now, if you remember the notion of large-scale trolley problems, and that's a real issue in planning nowadays, the moment AIs are at play. We need to avoid situations in which artificial intelligences are in charge of very complex ethical decisions, that are likely to affect the life of citizens and the future of cities. Those decisions should stay firmly in the hands of human operators, also to ensure more transparency and guarantee accountability. We should also improve processes of participatory governance and planning. This is a question of alignments, and if the goal is to align the development and use of AI towards the development of society as a whole, then we cannot achieve this goal unless we engage with citizens. And at the moment, this is not happening. We also need to avoid deploying AI en bloc. And here, geography is quite helpful because hopefully it has become clear as part of this lecture that there is not such a thing as AI. We don't have one AI. We have many, many different AIs: service robots, autonomous vehicles, city brains, urban operating systems, androids, robots, predictive algorithms, LLMs. So the variety is enormous. So we need to be careful. We need to think about what a specific city needs, what its capacity is in terms of governance, infrastructure, finance, what the problems are, and choose those AIs that can be helpful and avoid accepting AI as one gigantic category. So the question is not about saying yes or no to AI, but it's about distinguishing what AIs can be helpful or not in relation to the city where we live. And it's also about resisting those AIs that we believe are not helpful in relation to the problems that we are experiencing in our cities. And there are some interesting cases, such as that of Bologna in Italy or San Francisco in the US, cities that have actively resisted the deployment of certain types of AI, and perhaps we can discuss that during the Q&A. Last but not least, we have to increase our levels of AI literacy. Unless we better understand the way AI, particularly urban AI in cities, how this technology works, what it does, what the likely repercussions of its deployment will be, then all the previous points are meaningless. And so we need to boost our educational systems, so starting from kids upwards, adults, policymakers, planners. We need to approach the study of AI as a community to ensure that its deployment can be aligned towards the development of society as a whole. Now, I hope that I have triggered an interest in urbanism. If you wish to boost your own levels of AI literacy, I recommend this recent book that I co-edited together with a bunch of colleagues and friends from all over the world, Artificial Intelligence and the City, looking at multiple case studies and applications of urban AI. Thank you very much for your attention. Look forward to your comments and questions. Thanks.
I've got two really simple questions, and I'm embarrassed to ask them, really. Could you explain, in layman's terms, the nature of large language models? Yeah, that's my question number one.
Is that a simple one?
Yeah, is that a simple one?
No, that doesn't sound simple to me.
Okay,
but.
so that's a simple question. And the second one is, obviously, the AIs that we live with at the moment are rooted in current technology. So I've got my phone in my pocket, and computing capacity is a limit, I suppose, to AI. But I understand that in the next 10 years we will have quantum computing. Yeah. And how do you see quantum computing as transforming AI's capacity and maybe its influence on the city? So two very simple questions.
Sure. Again, they don't sound that simple to me, but I'll do my best to answer them. I think it is important to answer those questions thinking about how actually ignorant we are in relation to the way very complex AI systems work. And we don't really know the way LLMs operates. Yeah. So we know the theory, we know some of their capabilities, we know how they absorb inputs, and then those inputs become different forms of outputs. In the case of GPT, it could be a piece of poetry or an image. In the case of the AD and city brain, it would be a prediction about the future of the city. So instead of giving you a technical answer, I think it's important to stress that not even computer scientists fully understand the way these large-scale AIs operates. And this is very problematic because we have an epistemological vacuum in the city whereby ignorance in relation to these technology is hindering the process of urban development in terms of accountability and transparency. And quantum computing is going to make these issues even bigger. Now, at the moment, I haven't come across any particular case where quantum computing was already being developed. But I think what is important to remember in relation to quantum computing is that this is going to boost data processing, the amount of information that large-scale AIs can metabolize, and therefore it is going to increase the scope and agencies of these technologies that already have a lot of power, as I've explained in this lecture. Now, another important aspect to remember is that there is a lot of hype when it comes to LLMs and future AI technologies, including those powered by quantum computing. What is crucial to bear in mind is that even a simple algorithm can have a huge impact on society. So we don't have to wait until quantum computing becomes a reality to get worried about AI and the city. If you think about predictive algorithms deployed in policing cities and monitoring criminal activities, that technology is actually very simple. It's been around for a few years. So it's a simple technology. It is a simple technique, but the repercussions can be massive. It means that individuals potentially are going to be arrested, and their life will be forever changed.
Is it a bit like Minority Report?
It's funny you mentioned that, because actually in many AI projects, especially NEOM, and perhaps we can talk about more about the sci-fi behind AI later, but Mohammed bin Salman, who is pretty much my age, so he grew up in the 80s. So he grew up watching sci-fi movies, reading Asimov, also watching the movie that you mentioned, inspired by a very, very powerful short story by Philip K. Dick. There is actually a lot of influence that is coming from sci-fi. And in relation to some of the topics that I discussed today, we not only have scientific knowledge that is informing urban AI development in the city, we also have knowledge from science fiction, from sci-fi literature that is informing the genesis of the city. And I think this is also problematic because it is now grounded in science hence my argument about evidence-based policy. So using, science, the work that we do in academia to inform the development of urban AI rather than using science fiction. I mean, as much as I love sci-fi, I wouldn't, base the development of a city on a sci-fi novel.
Okay, great. We have an opportunity for some questions. I've spotted 2. So, I spotted 3, 4. Okay, so I'll do them in sequence. Thank you.
Good evening. As much as I love to see commander data in real life, I think AI, the current form, should not be treated as sentient. So, if I may ask a question about the framing of your research, instead of seeing these AI-related urban governance exercises from the lens of posthumanism, would it be possible to see them as simple abdication of responsibility via wrongful delegation or misuse of tools or methods? I'm asking this under the context of the use of large language models in legal sphere, where a very recent judgment come from the US called Mata and Avianca has made following remarks, which I thought could be quite applicable to these situations, that generative AI, while a promising tool, is not a replacement for human responsibility and oversight.
Very important question. Thank you for raising these points. So let's clarify this issue. There is no evidence at all about AI being sentient or conscious. The evidence points otherwise. So my perspective is quite critical. I come from the critical social sciences, and there is a lot of work showing how these technologies are designed in a deceitful manner so that we project consciousness on them. And in a way, it is purposely strategized to shift the responsibility away from AI companies. That's something that I mentioned in my lecture. So there is a strategy whereby if AI is conscious and it is granted legal personhood, it becomes responsible for any wrongdoing. And that's a move that AI companies would like to see implemented so that they don't become responsible for what AI does. And as I stressed in my lecture, this is a very, very dangerous situation that we should be avoiding. Matters of consciousness are also a part of broader political economic strategies, in a sense that the case of Sophia, for example, we have an artificial intelligence that is presented in a way that is supposed to represent a conscious entity. But that's a spectacle. It's a spectacle that is created to attract investments, to revamp the international reputation of Saudi Arabia as a progressive country. And so we need to be quite careful in the way these technologies are portrayed as being conscious, because the actual reality, the order of things doesn't quite resonate with these false images.
Thanks for an interesting talk, and probably with profound implications for planning and transport planning. My question is on the trolley problem and that type of ethical issue. How would a large language model or other forms of AI tackle that sort of issue? Is it reliant on someone programming the algorithm, or is it just delving into the literature and coming up with an answer? And how does it handle that?
That's the thing, we don't know. And this is incredibly scary, isn't it? Because these LLMs are dealing with complex ethical decisions. And I think that in planning and urban governance, we haven't quite realized how impactful these decisions can be. But we don't know exactly how they operate, how they come up with predictions and decisions. They are black boxes. They are impenetrable from the outside. And this obscurity is a matter of transparency and accountability, and they are both lacking. And so, in my opinion, we should, yes, increase our levels of AI literacy, but at the same time, we should be resisting the use of these large-scale AIs when it comes to matters that are very sensitive from an ethical point of view.
Thank you for a really stimulating talk. Is that on?
It's on, yes.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
My question arises from your slide about participatory governance. Who should participate? Because we're seeing increasingly people use AI to write planning objections so they can have the most chance of stopping or supporting something. Do we have, if we have a life of radical abundance enabled by AI, do you just let a bot or a Sophia-like being to kind of take your role in a participatory process? Or unless you're living in a cave in your urban area, I mean, you can't really not have the information you receive filtered by AI. So how do you see that working? Thank you.
Right. Very important question. AI urbanism has become a global phenomenon, but of course, depending on specific cities, there are nuances that we have to take into account. So my arguments in favor of participatory governance and planning is due to the idea that if you want to develop AI so that this technology can benefit society as a whole, then it is important to engage with society as a whole in the first place. And I don't see this happening internationally. I mean, I look at global AI governance and AI regulations at the national and international scale, and they are quite efficient when it comes to engaging with citizens. So I think that the city is a good place to start an experiment with practices of participatory governance in relation to AI. But as I also mentioned, this can be detrimental unless we have sufficient levels of AI literacy, so people can understand how the technology in question works, and so they can have an informed opinion about both AI and the city. And also, my point was also based on some case studies that I quickly mentioned, Bologna, San Francisco, because there are very few exceptions nowadays, cities in which citizens have expressed, not simply their opinion about AI on social media, but they've actually forced local municipalities to listen to their fears, to their desire. So, for example, in San Francisco, in 2022, so quite recently, the local municipality wanted to deploy police robots. And the technology was already operational, it was ready to be deployed. And citizens in San Francisco reacted against this technology. They didn't want to be stopped by a robot in relation to potential criminal activities. So I think that it is important to understand that although we live in a situation in which different media portray AI as something that is getting out of control, actually we know we can shape the deployment of AI. When I say we, citizens, because we are living in the same city, and unless we have a say together, then AI can be deployed by powerful individuals. The case of Bin Salman in NEOM is the good example. But this can be avoided the moment we boost our educational systems in tandem with techniques of participatory governance.
Hi there, thank you for the lecture. I have quite a simple one to end you off. Just looking at your case studies in Abu Dhabi and in Hong Kong, to speak about the purpose of the city, did you perceive any difference in the purpose of those cities that the AI was trying to deliver, if that makes sense? Could you kind of understand any difference in the vision, or was it a homogeneous vision of the kind of perfect city, I suppose, to rephrase the question?
Okay, so if there were geographical differences in the way AI was envisioning future cities.
I guess, was it leading to a standardization of those cities towards a single objective? Did you perceive differences in what the AI was being asked to optimize against, for example? Were they different visions using AI, or were they the same vision using different AIs?
Right. Very interesting question. The answer cannot be a simple yes or no. So, in the sense that there were both similarities and differences, because in many ways these large-scale AI systems are drawing upon social media. So there is information that is available worldwide. So there are cultural components that are global in nature, and they fit into visions of the city that resonate across spaces. But at the same time, they also draw upon information that is produced in real time in specific cities. So there is a bottom-up process as well, whereby large-scale AIs learn about the city and influence its future development. So it's both ways.
Thank you for a fascinating lecture. In passing, you mentioned that there's a lot of evidence to suggest that AIs are fundamentally unsustainable. And I just wonder whether you could unpack that a little bit, because I would have thought that something like the city brain would, if we asked it the right questions, then it could help us to deal with some of the profound questions around sustainability and so forth, and how we use resources in cities and how we can use those resources more efficiently. But you seem to be suggesting that it couldn't be used in those ways, or actually it's, there's something about it which suggests that it's in the long term going to be more unsustainable than it is sustainable. I just wonder whether you could, as I say, unpack that a little bit.
Sure, I can unpack that issue from an environmental point of view. So, the use of technology always comes at a price. Environmentally speaking, large-scale AI systems rely on data centers, and data centers are energy intensive. They're also consuming a lot of water to cool down the infrastructure. They emit a lot of carbon emissions. And so even just a single data center, which, by the way, it's a huge infrastructure. It can be as big as a town. So that per se has a very strong environmental footprint. But also, if you think about the technology per se, we often have an understanding of AI as an immaterial technology, as a pure software. And I think that an urbanistic perspective on AI is helpful to understand that this is a very material technology. It's about robotics, it's about infrastructures, it's about data center. And so the moment you want to build these products, these objects, these technologies, well, you need materials. You need critical raw materials. And so these are rare earth elements coming through supply chains that are energy intensive, that they rely on the exploitation of local ecosystems in places like the Congo, as well as relying on the exploitation of the local population. So there is already a lot of research on this topic, hence the unsustainability of these technologies. But we know much less about the potential of AI to improve the environmental sustainability of the city. So far, we actually don't have scientific papers, pointing clearly to sustainable solutions, with empirical evidence. We have a lot of speculations, and we have a few hypotheses and simulations. So simulations in digital environments, simulating cities, but not evidence coming from real life urban environments. Hence my suggestion to wait until we have scientific evidence before deciding to deploy AI in our cities.
Yeah, I've been to, I'd say, a couple of RTPI events in the last couple of months where AI was being discussed. And my observation was that there wasn't any sort of critical engagement in the ethical issues involved. Do you have any suggestions as to how the planning system profession within the UK can take it seriously? And do you have any resources that you could recommend for that?
Thank you for sharing this concern. I have the same one. I think it's a big concern. I mean, my first advice would be to try and clarify that planning as a practice involves making very complex ethical decisions. So raising awareness about the ethical implications of urban planning, and the fact, therefore, that you need to be working with scholars specialized in the ethics of artificial intelligence, with philosophers, for example, critical social scientists. There has to be an interdisciplinary endeavor. At the moment, we don't have a lot of material that has been published in literature from urban studies or planning. And one of the challenges is that this has to be an interdisciplinary endeavor, but interdisciplinary collaborations are still difficult to implement, and there's due to different funding schemes, also finding the time to create common grounds, but it is absolutely crucial to realize the nature of trolley problems, not simply in transportation, but also in urban planning and governance. So I hope that by raising this type of awareness, the planning community, we realize that ethics plays a major role in urban development, and that we cannot ignore this dimension. Now, I have to say that to some extent I'm optimistic, because if you think about it, until recently, ethics as a discipline, as a field of study, was not very much under the spotlights. But because of AI, now we're talking about the ethics of artificial intelligence as a very, very important strand of research. And so ethics is already a part of fields such as international governance, law, transportation. So planning, I think, can draw from lessons that these other strands of research have already produced as part of a global movement in favor of the ethics of AI.
Okay, thank you very much, Federico. I think what you've done tonight is you've introduced us to a much broader, materialistic form of AI. And I think as planners, we're very familiar with the chat boxes. We're very concerned about AI in development management. We're very concerned that AI elicits its information maybe from sources that we would rather it didn't or it shouldn't. And we're concerned about AI. I think tonight, after listening to you, I'm now scared. So I've gone from concern to scared. But thank you very much for a wonderful presentation this evening. If we could thank Federico in the traditional manner. So I would just like to say grazie mille for
Prego.
this evening.
Grazie.
Grazie. Thank you again. Thank you.
Thanks.